We went from slaves to sharecroppers and then Jim Crow. And here we are today. We're supposed to be free and things are supposed to be fair and equal. And we're still facing some of the same challenges that my grandfather were facing. Because quite frankly, Black farmers are an endangered species. And generally when you have an endangered species in America, Congress comes in and saves them. So here we can do that for animals, but we can't do it for the oldest occupation in the history for Black people, to help save the Black farm in this country. We're on the verge of extinction.
It's kind of soft as compared to last year. So what you do is, there you go, beautiful. There you go, see, just take your hand and press it out and pull it out.
It's hot.
Yeah. No, it's not hot.
Will Scott Jr. is an 80-year-old fourth-generation farmer from Fresno, California. The oldest of 15 kids, a Navy veteran, a father of 4, and grandfather, he credits his hard work ethic to the lessons his father and grandfather taught him on the farm.
I was born in Idabel, Oklahoma. You know, we lived out in the country, way out in the country. Matter of fact, it's so far out in the country that they call the place the bottom. We grew our own stuff, raised our own vegetables, raised our own animals, you know, for slaughter. Sharecropping is when you make an agreement that you will farm someone's land, you know, and you give them a half of the crops that are grown on it. Because before that, you was a property of the owner. Now, as a sharecropper, you're the property of the land. It was strictly another form of slavery. Back in those days, it was them and us. There were some people because, you know, the Klan was they call them night riders. They was in the area, you know, but they never messed with us because, you know, my grandfather was the kind of person that, you know, you didn't bother.
In search of a better life, in 1952, the Scott family fled by night on a train to California.
You know, in the 60s, when Dr. King and Malcolm X and other great civil rights leaders, NAACP, banded together and was able to get the Voting Rights Act passed. That was very powerful and a great thing for Black people in this country.
John Boyd Jr. is a fourth-generation farmer from Virginia and the president and founder of the National Black Farmers Association.
It didn't give us the right to loans. It didn't give us the right to monies. And that's what hurt, you know, Black farmers. You know, here we are, the oldest occupation in history for Black people is farming. It was a fraction of the justice that we needed. Therefore, I spent 10 more years in Congress. On December 8th, 2010, the president signed the Claims Remedy Act. I'm really not interested in a handout. I'm interested to be treated as a Black farmer with dignity and respect. There's a real sore spot because there are not enough young people, young Blacks, interested in being full-time farmers.
In 1920, there were nearly 950,000 Black farmers in the United States, compared to almost 5.5 million white farmers. Today, Black farmers are just 1% of the farming population. About 45,000 Black farmers out of 3.4 million farmers nationwide.
You know, those foods that are indigenous to the cultures, we should maintain that because that's what makes us great. You know, there are certain things like black-eyed peas, okra, which I grow. You know, I would like to see that continue, and I think that young people should contribute. You know, that's one facet of this country.
At Scott Family Farms in Fresno, Will Jr. made sure that he passed down the farming heritage to his son, Will III, and in turn to his son, Will IV, and daughter Indigo.
Growing up, my dad made us part of that farming dynamic. That's where I kind of got like a lot of my family history. My daughter was always interested in growing things and planting her own, you know, crops and things like that, you know, and my dad just imparted a lot of knowledge to her.
It's just nice that he was able to pass down something that I could have turned it into something that benefits more than just myself.
Agriculture should be, it's in my DNA, it's in theirs. What my mission was, what I was put on this earth. We were placed on this earth for something, for a reason.
The farm's goal is to reintroduce Southern specialty crops into black communities to help fight obesity and diabetes.
Try to start with the young people, because we have some very intelligent young people. You know, we encourage young people to say, you know, if you got a backyard, you know, put up you some raised beds, start growing some things, you know. We work with this elementary school, you know, they have the victory gardens. We're working with some of the other centers to get them to get kids in. We have them come out and do a field tour. Hope is the only thing that keep us all going. Young people, they're picking up the banner. They know, you know, this is not right. And we need to live in a society where we can live in peace and we don't have to shortchange any one of our people, you know. So yeah, the hope is there.
There's still people alive who went to schools that were segregated. There's still people alive who remember the signs that said whites only and coloreds only. That's how they grew up. The grandchildren and children of former slaves are still alive. My great-great-grandfather was owned by his father. Was he treated as a son? I'll never know. But I do know he was owned by him. He was part of his property listed in the book that had his property listed.
The history of black Americans begins like no other ethnic or immigrant group in this country because of slavery. While most of us learn in school about the Mayflower, it's the arrival of another ship that marks the beginning of the institution of slavery in America. The White Lion brought 20 to 30 enslaved Africans to the British colony of Virginia in 1619, a year before the Mayflower arrived. Millions of blacks were enslaved in America until the 13th Amendment officially abolished slavery in 1865 after the end of the Civil War. What followed were Jim Crow laws that legalized racial segregation for the next 100 years. It wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that meaningful civil rights legislation was passed. So even though blacks have been in America for 400 years, they've only had these rights for around 60 years. And even then, systemic racism ingrained in our society and organizations persists.
My name is Evelyn Scales Thompson. I am the descendant of slave owners and slaves. It appears that in this country in the past, black lives did not matter except when they benefited the white man. So there's a lot to be said, and there's a big message to say black lives matter.
Thompson's mission is to collect and preserve the oral history of the African American community in Surry County, North Carolina.
She is definitely on a mission to pass on the history and make sure that someone takes up the banner to keep it going. 400 years, right, of oppression, 60 years ago, civil rights movement. We'll have a whole 300 and some years to overcome. So 60 years is a short time to overcome 400 years of oppression. That's why I believe that it's the young people, my children's generation, the generations that are coming behind them, is going to make the difference.
My sister is my best friend. I love her. We are a kindred spirit. We are identical. We are one egg that's split. I am Cheryl McKissick Daniel, President and CEO of McKissick & McKissick, the nation's oldest Black-owned design and construction firm. Our history dates back 5 generations, so I am 5th generation in our business. Right now, one of the most exciting projects that we are working on is the JFK Airport. We're at the World Trade Center as a sub-consultant. Harlem Hospital, Medgar Everett's College in Brooklyn, Pier 42, we're part of the Studio Museum. Daryl is the architect of record for the MLK. That is just mind-boggling. She is also the program manager for the African American Museum. She's program manager for the Obama Library. Yes. So I am extremely proud of her. It feels like a true sense of accomplishment whenever you finish something this important to the nation, such an iconic landmark. And what Dr. King stood for, which was racial justice for all, for a firm like ours to be the designers and construction managers, lead design builders on a project like this, is really what Dr. King stood for. The first descendant of our family came here in 1790 as a slave, and his master taught him the trade of making bricks. And we believe at some point he received his freedom. He was from the Ashanti tribe in Ghana. He was a builder as a slave and passed the trade of building down to our great-grandfather, who passed it to our grandfather. Daryl and I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, on Fisk campus, on Tennessee State campus. Our grandfather has a PhD from Harvard from 1936. I feel extremely honored and blessed to have been born with that type of history, and that we know the history, and that people are interested in our history. One day, Daryl and I are at a birthday party for my mother's godson, and we were probably 9 or 10. And we walk outside, and it's a small yard, and there is a cross burning. A huge cross, 6 feet high. I had never seen anything like that. It scared us to death. And that's when we began to realize, oh my God, we lived in this little cocoon, and now we're seeing that there are people who really hate us. And it's hard to grasp that when you are around the educated and elite people that we were around. And that was the first time that I realized that there was racism. And there has not been one day since then that has changed that. All the monuments that we have designed and built and are working on, all of the Fortune 500 companies we've worked for, all the cities that we've built new faces for, I am still testifying today on minority participation in a city, even at this level, because at the end of the day, we're put under a different scrutiny than our white counterparts. It has always been an issue, always. Right now, my sister and I, we're gonna put up our running shoes in about 10 years. So that we have to have faith that there's a future for our business and that we're gonna pass the baton to the next generation. Aaliyah is my daughter, and she is 16, going on 17.
For a long time, I did want to become an engineer because I was like, I want to do what my mom does. So I did, but I feel like in recent years, I've become more interested in the fashion industry. I'm going to major in business, but she's been telling me that I should major in engineering still because a lot of engineers end up being great business managers. So I was like, so I'm considering it again.
I really feel like the architecture, engineering, and construction industry can change racism in America because we spend trillions of dollars, and it's going to take economics to change, where we are as a country, and to bring African Americans who's traditionally been left behind, to bring them on par with our white counterparts. There is an alternative out there because we're taught that in so many different ways that there is not, but there is a lot of success, and that you too, anybody, can achieve this.